Organisms, such as humans, are made up of different structures that can be organized at different levels. Starting at the smallest and least complex level, we have atoms. Atoms are the particles that make up elements such as carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, sulfur, phosphate, etc. When atoms bind together, they make molecules. So for example, they can make a water molecule, or they can make really big molecules like lipids, which are fats, carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and other molecules. When molecules join together, they can form things called organelles. And an organelle is just a small structure within something called a cell that carries out a specific function for that cell. So an example of an organelle is the nucleus. The nucleus is a structure in a cell that holds the genetic material of that cell. So all the organelles working together give us a cell as a structure or a unit of structure. When we put cells together, we can get tissues. So a tissue is just a group of similar cells that work together to produce a particular function. If we put different types of tissues together, we can get an organ. So in this example, we have the urinary bladder, and the urinary bladder contains a layer of smooth muscle, which is a type of tissue. It also contains epithelial tissue, connective tissue, and nervous tissue, which helps it carry out its function. And the urinary bladder is part of the urinary system. The kidneys produce urine, which is just a way to filter the blood to get toxins out of the body. And the urinary bladder is a temporary holding facility, if you will, for the urine that's produced so that we're not just constantly dribbling urine. It allows us to hold our urine until we can go release it into a toilet or, at the base of a tree or something like that. Now, if we put a whole bunch of organ systems together, we can get an organism like a human. So humans are made up of lots of different organ systems. We've got the skeletal system, muscular system, nervous system, etc., which we'll talk about in just a minute. But as a review, we can see that the entire organism would be something like a human. And then humans are made up of organ systems, which includes the urinary system, nervous system, reproductive systems, etc. Each of those body systems is made up of organs, and those organs are just the individual structures that make that up. So for example, with the urinary system, we have the urinary bladder, the kidneys, the ureters, and the urethra. Organs are made up of tissues, which can include things like muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, connective tissue, and nervous tissue. Tissues are made up of cells. Cells are made up of organelles, which are the little structures inside the cells, and organelles are made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. So let's move on and take a look at some of the organ systems that we would find in the human body. So here's a list of the organ systems that we'll be covering this semester in class. And we'll take a closer look at some of the structures and functions associated with each of these organ systems on the next couple slides. So the first organ system that we're going to talk about is the integumentary system. Integument just means a covering. So the integumentary system primarily deals with the skin and also the hair and the nails. It helps to provide a boundary between the inside of our body from the external environment, so that things that happen outside the body don't necessarily affect things inside the body. There are also a lot of sensory receptors associated with the skin that helps us to sense what's going on in the external environment around us. The skeletal system supports the body, and it helps to enable movement because the muscles use the bones to pull on in order to move our body around in our environment. The skeletal system is made up of bones, joints, which are the areas where bones come together, and cartilage. The muscular system helps with the movement of the body. Remember, we said the muscles attach to the bones, and when the muscles contract, they pull on the bones to help us move around. They also help to maintain our body temperature, because think about what happens when you get really cold. You start to shiver, and shivering is just an involuntary contraction of the skeletal muscles that helps to generate heat. In addition to skeletal muscles, tendons are the structures that connect skeletal muscles to the bones. The nervous system detects and processes sensory information, and it activates bodily responses. So you are able to move your muscles because the brain sends a signal to the muscles to tell them to contract. You can also tell whether a stove is hot or cold because the sensory information can travel through the nervous system to the brain, where the brain processes that information to give you a conscious understanding of whether the stove is hot or cold. So the main structures associated with the nervous system are the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. The endocrine system includes glands in the body that secrete hormones. And hormones are just chemical messengers that help to regulate the different bodily processes. So, for example, hormones help to determine our metabolism. It's involved in the stress response. It helps to produce sex cells for reproduction and other things like that. There are several endocrine glands in the body, but some of the main ones are the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the pancreas, adrenal glands, testes, and ovaries. The cardiovascular system consists of the heart and blood vessels, and the main purpose of the cardiovascular system is to deliver oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. It also helps to move heat around the body in order to maintain a normal body temperature. The lymphatic system is often also lumped together with the immune system, and it consists of the thymus, lymph nodes, spleen, and lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic system helps to regulate the fluid in our body tissues by draining it from certain areas and returning it to the bloodstream. There are also a lot of immune cells associated with lymphatic structures, and so that's the connection to the immune response. The respiratory system helps us to bring oxygen into our body and get rid of carbon dioxide. And the respiratory system structures include things like the nasal passage, the trachea, which is also known as the windpipe, and the lungs. The digestive system helps us to process food so that our body can use it in order to make energy. It also gets rid of waste products from food materials that we can't get energy from. So the main structures of the digestive system are the stomach, liver, gallbladder, large intestine, and small intestine. The urinary system helps to control the water balance in the body. So for example, if you drink a lot of water, you're more likely going to have to pee more, whereas if you don't drink a lot of water, you will pee less, but you will also become dehydrated. The urinary system also filters the blood in order to get rid of different things that our body doesn't need. So maybe these are drugs that you've taken, or if you eat too much sodium or potassium, the kidneys help to control that in the body. And the main structure are the kidneys and the urinary bladder, and then the tubes that connect them. Now, the reproductive system can be divided into male and female structures, and you'll notice that some of these structures were also listed in the endocrine system, and that's because the testes and the ovaries produce hormones that are involved in reproduction. So in males, the reproductive system is responsible for producing sex hormones like testosterone and gametes, which are sperm. The penis also delivers gametes to the female during sexual intercourse. The female reproductive system produces sex hormones such as estrogen and progesterone, and it also helps to support and grow an embryo into a fetus which can then be born as a baby. The female reproductive system also produces milk in order to nourish the infant through the first couple years of life.